yes, I get the honor of preaching this morning. I always like the opportunities when I get to be able to do this and get to address all of you. I talked to some of your children in youth group, and now it's fun to get to talk to some of you. So, Sam approached me and said, "Hey, would you like to participate in this series that we're doing?" And I said, "Absolutely." And then he said, "It's going to be about a song. You're going to pick a song about a Christmas, and you're going to talk about how you feel God in that song." And I said, "You know what? We've been doing this as a youth group for quite a while. I don't remember when we started it, but we've done this at least for about a year now, where I'll get the youth, the students, to pick a song. And then I play the song, we look at the lyrics and everything, and they each talk about how they feel God in that song, or how God speaks to them in that song. So it was really kind of cool to be able to have Sam come and say, "Hey, this is what we're going to do as a series." So I picked Silent Night. Now, Silent Night feels like it's been around for forever, and everybody knows Silent Night. In fact, it's so well known that in 1914, during World War I, during the Christmas truce, all the sides came together and sang Silent Night. In unison, it was sung in English, German, and French. But the song made its debut quite a number of years before then. You see, it started in 1818. Father Joseph Moore of St. Nicholas Parish in Obendorf had a bit of a problem. It was Christmas Eve, and it was time for music, but the problem was some mice had gotten into the organ. Couldn't use the organ. So what he did is he went back and he found a poem that he'd written a couple years before entitled Stille Nacht. So he took that poem and he went to a neighboring area and he found a schoolmaster by the name of Franz Xavier Gruber. Franz put it to the tune of the only instrument he had at the time that they were going to use, which was guitar. So this morning, if you're wondering, that's why I chose to have it played purely on the acoustic guitar, because in 1818, that was the original way that the song was played. Now, we didn't get it into the version that we sing until quite a number of years later. In fact, it was 1859 when Bishop John Freeman Young translated it into English that we have the version that we sing today. Now, Silent Night is such a wonderful song. It's calming. It's relaxing. It's like a lullaby, right? It lowers your blood pressure. It's great. It makes me sleepy. But, as any parent knows, having a baby is the exact opposite of that, right? It's not all like, "Oh, yeah, I'm going to take a nap and wake up and, oh, my child's here, it's all quiet." No, that's not what happens. I can remember, I haven't been a parent long, but I can remember it as if it were 3 months ago exactly to this day. It was not a silent night, okay? Luckily, unlike Mary and Joseph, we only had to wait 6 hours at the hospital before we got a room. But we got a room. It seemed like it took forever, but I remember the rush. I remember everything going on. I remember blood pressures being up through the roof and anxiety and excitement and everything that was going on, and my brain was electric, right? And then I remember when it was like, "Hey, it's time. We're going to wheel Kristen into the delivery room." So we're rushing to put on gowns. They're trying to get her in there as quickly as they can. Nurses and doctors are running around everywhere. They get her in there. And I'm like, "Oh, this is about to happen. This is about to happen. This is so awesome," right? So then you have the sounds of the machines. You have the sounds of the doctors and the nurses and everybody talking and everything. And then I'm talking to my wife. I don't really remember what I'm saying, just so you know. But I'm, doing my best to be like, "It's okay. It's going to be fine." Because I'm not in any pain at this point. But it's going to be okay, right? So, but in the midst of that, you want to know what I heard in my head? Nothing. Because everything in my mind pushed out every single sound that was coming at me. Because I was wanting and waiting to hear one thing, and only one thing. And that was the sound of my son. Right? So even in the midst of all this crazy noise and everything going around, my body eagerly awaited the cry. I just wanted to hear that cry. Because I knew when I heard that cry, little man's all right. My son is here. So as soon as I heard that cry, then everything came flying right back at me. All the noises came back, excitement, my hair on my arm was standing on end. Like it was the moment that changed my life forever. And as most of you parents know, that is a moment that changes your life forever. It's a moment that you're not going to easily forget. You're never going to be able to tell this story and be like, I don't really know. I guess it was kind of cool. No. It's a moment that changes your life forever. And understand that what happened in Bethlehem on that night was a moment that changed history in the universe forever. All right? It was a moment that we in the world are never going to forget. All right? Surrounded by the animals and hay and the smell, this holy family kind of hunkered down for the night. They didn't really have anywhere else to go. And then during the delivery, the entire world held its breath, eagerly awaiting what was about to happen. In the silence, right? So in the seclusion of that stable, in the stillness of the night, in the silence of that hillside, something absolutely amazing happened. The very face of God came down and kissed our earth. In that stillness, right? When Jesus broke the silence with the first cry to come out of him, the entire world erupted with excitement. The entire world lit up because it knew what that meant. All right, and this wasn't a normal cry, right? This cry was a sound of freedom arriving on the scene. This cry was Satan being put on notice. This cry was God telling everything that he did not forsake his creation and that he loves you more than you're ever going to be able to understand. This was the cry that was so loud and so powerful that it echoed throughout history in a way that rewrote the hopes and dreams of all humanity. You see, the cry was heard in the stillness and the silence of that night. The stillness and the silence are what made it so audible, made it so loud. Without the silence, it would have been very easily to drown that sound out with everything else that was going on. It would have been easy just to forget it. See, the silence and stillness is a necessity to hear the cry in your life. The problem with that is most of us absolutely hate being quiet. We absolutely hate being still. We don't want to. Silence makes us uncomfortable. I mean, we say we want some peace and quiet, but do we actually arrange our lives that way? No. We arrange our lives in such a way that we don't have to be still, we don't have to be quiet, we don't have to stop and listen. You see, in silence is where you hear the most. It's where you learn the most. And it's where you can be and spend the most intimate time with God. Silence is significant. With the possibility of being intimate with God, there will come major spiritual and mental backlash. You see, Satan comes to steal, kill, and destroy. That's his job description. That's what he does. That's it. And what a better way to do this than by tricking us with the illusion that silence is too hard and uncomfortable. You don't have to do it. It doesn't make you feel good. Don't worry about it. Just keep going. You see, we run from this so much. We try to stay busy. We do everything we can to not have to stop and be still and be silent. Our relationships are full. Our schedules are slammed. And our time is completely absorbed in some kind of task or electronic addiction. We never stop. We've bought into the lie that we have to maximize every second of every day and be busy or that we're complete failures. Trust me, I know firsthand that I can be busy all day long and not have gotten anything done when I lay my head down at night. Busyness does not equal accomplishment. Constant movement does not always mean progress. Purposeful stillness and silence does not mean procrastination. Our lives have lost balance. We tend to try to go 100 miles an hour all the time and never stop. We never rest. We never just take a breath and let it fill us and revive us. Rest and revivification requires that we be still and we be quiet. God calls us into these times of silence and stillness. In Psalms 46, verse 10, this is what it says. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. And if you look at the life that Jesus led while he was on this earth, you see time and time again where he went off into a secluded place. He understood the need for this. It was a place of silence and stillness where he could spend time with his Father. Jesus knew the importance of this discipline. He knew the importance of why he had to do it. He knew that it was something that was a lifeline between him and his Father. It was a lifeline between him and God. A time where he could simply be in his Father's presence and be filled by him. And in doing that, then Jesus was able to pour out the love and power of God to the people that he encountered. So when we look at the scripture that Pastor Sam read in Matthew 14, what has just happened right before this chunk, Jesus had just found out that his cousin John the Baptist had been beheaded. He had just found out of the loss of one of his dearly loved family members. And as any of you know, with the loss of a family member, it's not an easy thing to take. It's quite hard. So, what we find out is Jesus' reaction to this is extremely important. See, he could have gotten angry. He could have incited a riot with the people. The people loved John the Baptist. Herod knew this. So Jesus could have easily said, you know what, I'm going to get back at Herod, and I'm going to start a riot. I'm going to start an uprising, and we're going after the king, because he had no right to do this. Jesus didn't do that. He didn't do that at all. See, if you look into verse 13, this is where Pastor Sam started reading. It says, when Jesus heard about it, he withdrew from there by boat to a remote place to be alone. Jesus understood that he needed some time to be still and silent before God so that he could heal and process what had happened to John. He knew that in his hurt and in his pain that he needed to be able to withdraw and be in solitude with his Father. But here's the thing. It continues on. When the crowds heard this, they followed him on foot from the towns. He stepped ashore, he saw the huge crowd, felt compassion for them, and he healed their sick. So, in the midst of him trying to withdraw himself, a ministry opportunity presented itself. And it said that Jesus saw them, and he felt compassion for them, and he healed their sick. So, after that, we see the miracle that Pastor Sam's talking about that a lot of you know, the feeding of the 5,000. Right? A big miracle happened immediately following that. So then what happens? What follows it is extremely important. In verse 22 it says this, immediately Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. After dismissing the crowds, he went up to the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. Jesus understood that he still needed to plug into God. He didn't immediately have that opportunity right after he found out this news because a ministry opportunity presented itself. He followed the will of God. He did what he needed to do in that ministry opportunity, but he still understood his dire need to be in solitude with God. He understood he still needed that healing. Now, Jesus could have easily just pushed it off and said, I'm too busy. I got too much stuff going on. Let bygones be bygones. I'm just going to keep moving forward. But he didn't do that. He understood this discipline. He understood how important it was. This discipline helped him prepare for the next miracle. And what the next miracle that lines up with this is immediately after he sends all the disciples out on the boat, after he has this alone time with God and gets refilled, the following miracle is one of the most well-known. It's where Jesus walks on the water in the storm out to his disciples. That discipline of silence and stillness helped Jesus to heal and refill. It recharged him. It gave him the healing that he needed, and it empowered him to do what God was calling him to do after that. So my question is, why do we believe that we can do the same as Jesus without doing the same as Jesus? We tend to try to just do everything without doing everything. I cannot perform like a pro athlete unless I train like a pro athlete. I can't act like Jesus unless I act like Jesus. I can't pick and choose which parts of Jesus' life I want to act like and neglect the other ones. But we tend to do that. I want to pick the highlights and live the highlights so that I look good. That's not it. Right? I know that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, but the thing is, Christ strengthens me in that stillness, in that solitude, where I get quiet and I get still before God. That's where my strength comes from. Because without him, without that strength, I'm just an empty shell of a man. And that is utterly terrifying. Because here's the thing. When I choose to be still and silent in front of God, my mind goes crazy. I start thinking about everything. I start hearing everything. And I admit it's uncomfortable. I don't want to have to do it. I don't want to have to hear all these things. And these voices, they scream in my head. And they're telling me things like, you're not good enough. You're a little kid playing dress up like an adult. And God doesn't want to use somebody like you. I mean, look how small you are. Insignificant. Right? And even though those lies are being screamed at me, I have to willingly choose to push through those. Because I know they're lies. I might feel it, but I know it's a lie. I know it's not true, but it's what's attacking my head. So then I have to push through all of those lies. And then when I push through the lies, I immediately encounter myself. I'm confronted by my need for control and my ego. Right? In this world, our ego and our title are what we're known for. It's what people see us as. It's how we're identified. It's what we work for. It's what we try to build here because it's what gives us power and control. So, in solitude with God, understand that your ego means absolutely nothing. So when I come before God in my solitude, in my silence, and I push past those lies, I can't hide behind my ego. I can't hide behind what I've built here. You know why? Because God sees me for who I am. He knows the real me. He knows me to my core. So after I step out from behind my ego, my need for control starts going crazy. See, I want things to go a certain way. I need things to be in a certain order, and I need this to happen, and then this to happen, and this to happen, and it needs to happen A, B, C, and D, so then it'll happen, and all the results will be the way that I want them to be. And it'll be perfect. It'll be the way that Seth wants it to be. But is that what I need to have happen? Absolutely not. Right? So I come before God in this stillness. And I say, all right, I'm going to purposefully push through these lies. And I'm going to step out from behind my ego. And I'm going to relinquish control and put my trust in God. So I stand there still and quiet in front of God in the most vulnerable way that I ever could be. Like a frightened little kid covered in the dirt of my sin and the bruises of the fights that I've been trying to wage, and weak and restless from these nightmares that are running through my head, and ashamed that I'm not able to do this by myself. And I come before God, and I give him everything that is his. And that is all of me. And it's silent. And it is still. And you know what happens? God reaches down and meets me where I am. God has always been faithful to grab a hold of me and wash my dirty sin away from me and hold me in his arms and give me a peace that I have been craving and longing for my entire life. And he holds me and he tells me, you know what? You weren't ever meant to do this by yourself. It is by my power and my ability that you are anything ever. Hold on to me. And so I stay there in the silence, being held by my Father while he sings over me. And in that silence, the silence is broken by a cry. my cry. A cry of a child being comforted by his father. A cry that claims all the freedoms that God is offering me. A cry that is the sound of chains being broken and falling off. It's a cry of healing. And today I understand that Christmas season isn't silent. There's always something going on. There's always something bombarding us. There's always something coming at us. Whether it be Christmas lights all over the place. They can be peaceful, but they can also be an overload on sensory. Christmas is, how much can I get done? How much can I do? I got to fit in this and this and this and this and this. And the thing is that you need a silent night. You need to stop and you need to be still. A night where all the glitz and the glam and the rush of the holidays are quieted. You see, where we can push through all these pains and experiences that we've had, and we can go before our Father, and we can be healed, and we can be refilled. Because I promise you that if you get silent purposefully, and you stand before your Father, the cry of heaven will be heard in your silence. He is just and faithful to meet you where you are. He will clean you up and he will hold on to you. It's a cry that you must be quiet and still yourself in order to hear. It's a cry that will transform you. Stillness helps decipher our past and direct our future. Only in those times of solitude and stillness with God can help us understand what has happened to us, help us process this, and then empower us for the plans that God has for us in the future. But be warned, if you choose not to still yourself, if you choose to continue just to try to run through this life at 100 miles an hour, it will be extremely easy to not hear that cry in your life. The cry will be there. You have to be willing to hear it. You have to be willing to still yourself and silence your life in order to hear this. Because if you don't, you might miss the greatest gift that God has for you this season. Pray with me.